I'm just waiting for his thumbs up. All right, it's happening. Welcome, everybody. I have a very exciting guest here today. This is we had like I had a super big tech foul a couple weeks ago, but he's back in a good way, not in the Freddy Krueger way. Matt Ross is here. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a media executive. He's got 30 years of experience building businesses that inspire passion and creativity. So if you're on here and you're a writer or a creator, make sure you stay. From rocking New York's airwaves to scaling global education brands, he's now the author of Grow or Fold, Transform Yourself in Midlife and Beyond, which is a story of awakening your enthusiasm for growth. Um, since 2012, Matt's been the founder and CEO of One River School, a company whose mission is to transform art education. And today they have 15 schools in 6 states with plans to grow more. And I bet you know this brand, School of Rock. In 2005, Matt became the CEO of School of Rock and turned a struggling music education company into a startup, into a dominant brand, growing from 5 to 55 locations. He's got commitments for another 50. And then he engineered the sale of that company. He's got an MBA in finance. I mean, obviously, he knows what he's talking about. And I'm just super excited to have you with me. I'm just honored.
Thank you.
Okay. So I want to talk about this from the interesting angle about your focus on midlife. Um, and how have you kept growing um, without turning it into like another like performance project? Because at this point, like people are asking themselves when is it enough, how do you know how to keep growing, when do you keep growing? um so I'm curious, like, to start, where did this whole grow or fold come up? Like, what was going on for you when those words kind of became real?
Well, first of all, I think genetically I've got a bit of a disease, and that disease is I need to learn and I need to challenge my curiosity constantly. And I say it's a disease because I don't know that it's ever going to end for me, but I do need to manage it, to your
Right.
point, because you can go down rabbit holes and rabbit holes and rabbit holes. My pivot at 50 was a bit different. It was required, Marnie. I was really struggling with my life. I'll give you a sense of what was happening.
Yeah, tell me.
I was having health issues, and for the first time, feeling like, gosh, I'm feel a little vulnerable. I'm 50. I don't feel like a Superman anymore. I feel like I don't have answers to these health issues, and kind of concerned. And it kind of took a bit of a reckoning to sort of look in the mirror and go, I'm not that young, robust guy anymore, and I better start to work on my health plan. So that got my attention. But there were a lot of other things that were out of my control. My two older brothers were lost to addiction,
Mm.
and it was not just casual. One was in and out of public assistance housing in New York, and angry and angry. My oldest brother. My next brother, who is also older than me, um, was living in Las Vegas and having suicidal ideation.
Mm.
So here I am, the youngest of three guys, and I had kind of always been a bit of a caregiver to these guys,
Okay.
and now I was feeling beaten down because
Yeah.
I I was sort of now struggling physically, and now starting to struggle mentally because the overwhelming challenge of dealing with brothers with multiple addictions who I love but couldn't help any
Right.
longer. I needed to. I don't know if you've been down this path of any
Yeah.
guests or anyone. It's a really sort of weird place to be because All that yelling and screaming and fighting and trying to advocate, it doesn't change people. So I
Mm-mm.
needed to get some real assistance on my mental health and a program. On top of that, all four of our parents were dying. My wife's father and my father were dying, and our mothers were declining. So
Oh.
this is all going on at the same time in my 50th year. And then after I sold School of Rock to a private equity firm during that recession in '09, a year later, they decided they're going to bring in their team. This is what happens. And I got the boot. So now I'm out of the job.
Okay.
So I'm 50 years old, and I wish it stopped there, but the icing on the cake in a challenging way was my 16-year-old son, nonverbal, autism,
Mm.
severely disabled, had a full psychiatric breakdown,
Oh, sha. Wow.
in, institutionalized. And so I was literally in my basement the night we dropped him off at a psychiatric ward with drug addicted teens and suicidal teens, and my boy who couldn't speak, strapped down to a bed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Came home that night, and I literally was like, "Is this it?" Not that I was going to commit suicide, but I was like, "This really? How did my life get here?" And then I did what I do, beat myself up even more. I said, "Are you going to fold, you loser?"
Mm.
And I just sat there and I was just sort of like sitting there in the dark, depressed and sad and like clueless. And then I said, no, I'm going to grow. And I got this bug. I leaned forward and I said, grow or fold. So fast forward 7 years later, I was in a happy place. I had beaten down all these demons, figured out so many things personally, professionally, found a sense of purpose. I was all of a sudden feeling calm, Marnie,
Mm.
content. And I never felt content my whole life. And I literally said, what's going on? This is so weird. I feel so at peace. I should write a book about this.
Mm. About how you did it.
Yes. And that book tells my story of what I just told you, what happened in that moment of reckoning at 50. I went, I go back and share my sort of early sort of life to get you up to 50, just so you know the streets I've walked and the roads I traveled as a sort of young guy and as a young professional, and then always trying to deal with some noise in my brain and
Mm-hmm.
ambition and resilience side, but also this side that also had lots of challenges around me. And then the idea was I want to share what I did to fix my life at 50 and maybe help others. So now I'm on this journey to help people, and it's not like I want to be Tony Robbins
Right.
doing tours around the world where I'm sort of doing 1 week workshops. I could do that. I just want to actually share my book, share my learnings through forums like this, do some speaking, and hopefully get people to think a little bit about the fact that you have a lot of time ahead of you at 50 in midlife.
Yeah.
And what got you here won't get you there. So that's a business book by a guy named Marshall Goldsmith. And that was a story that I read a few years prior to 50, and it became a metaphor. I couldn't continue to live the same way and grow old, happy, healthy, content, and feeling like I achieved all my goals. I needed to focus on growth and thinking differently. And
Let
that's
me
the
ask you a
work I
question.
for.
So when you think, so there's so much like out there, like in the culture about talking about burnout and reinvention and what's next. Um, what do you think that people in midlife, and I'm talking about like people who are successful and ambitious, like what do you think that they're really hungry for besides all the talk about, the burnout in the next chapter? Like what do you think is really deep inside that they're like just really looking for, that's not filling it,
You
not
know,
making it land?
it's interesting. I That's a great question. you read a lot and hear a lot about the term purpose, but I did an informal survey and I asked people, can you tell me your purpose in one sentence? And the answer was zero people could tell me that.
Really
Zero people could frame it in a sentence. People
interesting.
people said, "Oh, I think my purpose is like being a great mom," or things like that. And so it's sort of they had an inkling of to what drove their purpose. But in my studies, like around longevity and health and wellness and mental health, those who had the best outcomes had clearly defined purpose. We
Hmm.
know that high social engagement, health and wellness programs, meaningful sense of recreation and growth. And as I'm going to add, creative growth. And
Yep.
I think that they are really good at navigating this idea of I'm not the same person I was at 20, 30, 40, but maybe there's a new opportunity for me to cast what I'd like to be at 50, 60, 70. What's the life? So I think those people, a lot of times we get stuck. To answer your question, maybe more specifically, what everyone wants is a little bit more time to step back and reflect and stop the train and the buses for a minute,
Hmm.
but they can't or they don't because we are taught to just stay in motion and go through your task list.
Right.
I think everyone wants some peace and more clarity around what does this all mean? You know what I mean? I mean, if I could be really spiritual and esoteric, like
Yeah,
what does it
go
all
for
mean?
it.
And I think that's really what it's about. I started reading a book that Chip Conley just wrote about midlife, and he's brilliant. And he started this whole thing called the Modern Elder Academy, and he talks about IQ, but also TQ, and TQ is transitional IQ. How
Hmm.
do I transition from period A to period B to period C to period D? And I'm not sure enough people really commit to that, and therefore they puff out their chests, then they go, I got it. I got it. I'm
Yeah.
good. You do you. But I think what
Well,
people really
yeah.
need is a moment to be reflective
Yeah,
and
I
to
think
really
that's such a really important thing because um I started my own journey at like 54. My mom had died at 64 and I was like, is this if I was going to die in 9 years, is this how I want my life to look? And I was stuck because I didn't know how to figure that out. There was no book, there was no chip, there was no whatever. Um, and so, but what's interesting, and I find this fascinating, and you hit the nail on the head, because this transition stuff, it feels like we should know how to, like we should. That's not hard, right? We'll pay someone to go get our blood work done and tell us what to eat. We'll pay someone. I used to be a dating coach exclusively, like help me meet the man, help me figure out what to wear, right? Like, but there's something in our brains that says we should just know how to transition. Should know how to age. We should know how to evolve. And I think that's bullshit. And I just feel like it's so hard to articulate to people, like, what is your resistance to finding a process that works for you so that you can be intentional. What have you seen happen when people ignore this and it kind of just like catches up with them, like either too late or after the fact, or like what have you noticed in that process?
there's a few things. And by the way, I think you're spot on. People don't ask for help, and they try to project this. They project this invulnerability. I got it. I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone. So in the book, I came up with a term called the dysfunctional safe zone. Let me walk
Love
you through
that.
what that idea means. You have you have friends, family, people who they go, "Hey, I got to talk to you. I got all these problems. I've got issues," and then they'll tell you like 14 things that are bothering them, or they just don't know what to do if they're really struggling. And you could sit and give them a list of 35 options, and then they will tell you why every option doesn't make sense or they can't or won't do it. So what happens is
I
that
call that
we
yeah, but
all
by the way.
yeah, but right.
Yeah,
And so
but
what happens is it feels safe to stay where I am, but it's dysfunctional because
right.
you've just shared with me this inventory of challenges and it starts with taking inventory. And if you're self-aware and you take the inventory, that's great. But the next, though, in my book, step one, self-awareness. What's
Right.
broken? What's not working? Step two, taking personal responsibility. So, like, for me, because things were so challenging, almost catastrophic, there was no question. I had to really jump in full body. But what I also learned to do is not just to put out the fire in the moment. Like you, I decided I wanted to think down the road, 5 and 10 years down the road. If this is a moment where I'm really sort of reinventing and or transitioning, getting past these major challenges, why can't I also spend time on vision, dream, goals,
Mhm.
things that, hey, if I, what's the kind of life I want at 65? Wouldn't that be amazing? Or at 60, that I had clarity around what exactly would make me happy so I could move to a new place. So I think another thing that people don't do is they don't dream. And
Yeah,
I think
totally.
it comes with that notion if I set a goal and I don't achieve it, I'm letting myself down. I'm a loser. So they go, I'm not even going to do that. And I've always been the opposite.
Me
I might
too.
have too many goals, too many dreams, too many ambitions, and I have to grind to get them all done or shed a few of them if they are no longer priorities are reasonable. But that shiny thing on the hill, I want that. And it doesn't mean money. It means whatever brings me joy and fulfillment. And that's where I strive to get to in life and have always been. And part of it's because I've always had to fight to claw my way out of where I was.
Yeah, I think that joy and fulfillment, they get put on like those maybe one day list, like after I do all those things I just said, right? Like after I lose weight, after I have enough money in the bank, after I da, da, da. And and I'm here, like my whole mission, why I wrote my book, Living Challenge, is because I don't want that to be radical, that you're trying to live your life based on joy first, like so that you're living like a fully expressed life and create your life around that. Um, I know you talk about like a midlife toolkit. So, what are like the two top principles that you can share when someone knows they're feeling the like dark soul of the night and something needs to change, but they don't know how to start?
Yeah. So one idea that I had and I wrote extensively in the book is how about trying to treat yourself like it's like you're a business? So I had built
Mm,
businesses, fixed broken business, and I could be very unemotional about it. What's working, not working? Where do I want to get to? What's the gap between where I am and where I need to get to? What are the decisions I need to make? How do I prioritize those? That's all strategy, right? But when
hmm
it comes to our personal lives and we have this subjective emotional thing that gets in the way. We don't have the same objective scorecard. So for me, I mentioned before taking inventory and then you know, taking personal responsibility. And you may hear a dog barking. I
I
hope it doesn't bother
do.
you. No
That's okay. My cat,
matter
if we were doing this at 10:30 a.m., my cat would be meowing so loud,
I
being
hope it
like,
doesn't bother you.
feed me.
I'm at a friend's house in Philadelphia, and it's a beautiful place. And I'm up on the fourth floor. I hear the little guy. So okay, thank you. Sorry. So so I think that inevitably treating yourself like a business is one idea. Another idea that a therapist said to me one day said, hey, imagine this, Matt. Imagine if you're thinking about all your problems and challenges and struggles. Imagine if you're sitting here and you're sort of sorting through it like, what do I do? What do I do? Where do I start first? Oh, no. Imagine if you were sitting up high across the room looking down on that person. what would you tell that person to do? So,
Mm,
like, how do you be a consigliere to yourself? How do you be the consultant, the guiding post? Again, it requires you to get unemotional and less subjective and really be deliberatively focused on best ideas win given the current state of your challenges. And
uh,
honestly, I've used that visualization at times, and it's been really helpful for me to like when I was really struggling, didn't know, hmm, just gonna sort of like imagine I'm not the subject. I'm advising this person. What would I
mm,
tell them to?
that's so
And it
brilliant.
just it's just a I think there's a metaphysical thing there. If you could feel that one small step removed from being the subject matter person as opposed to the advisor of that person. And, it's like you asked me at the very top of this, when does growth stop? And, how do you know how much? Well, one thing I would say is as part of all this, do you have the toolkit to do all these things? Or do you need assistance from someone? So when do you also raise your hand and say help?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that it's an interesting thing, this idea of uh, creating time to be still, to hear that wise advisor part of yourself. And that in hustle culture, like I just had a client who I challenged her to do this tool, and it's like 2 minutes. And she was like, "Oh my God, it went on. That was the longest 2 minutes of my life." Right. And I was like, yeah, because it's like going to the gym and, starting out, it feels like those 5 pound weights on the first day feel like, 20 pound weights. And so it's about having a practice that allows you to even, besides like, hear your wisdom, know that you have it, and then create that time, and then be able to create the space to have that like floating moment. Okay, my last question to you, because you've just been so made such a huge impact in the arts and working with creatives, and I'm curious about what art and creative environments has really taught you about reinvention that maybe traditional achievement culture misses?
I love that idea. So, when I wrote the book, I reflected on my youth where I was kind of a creative kid. I was acting in plays, starring in plays. I was doing comedy and impressions and passionate about music and learning to play the guitar. And none of it was supported at home. My family was breaking down.
Mm,
They were asleep at the wheel. So I kind of let it be. I went and played sports. As I got into my professional life, I realized that I really was this creative guy and did well with creating advertising solutions, and then went into the music space, music education space, and art space. And when I take it full circle, I'm now in writing this book. One of my chapters is creative growth is the X factor. So I
mm,
have this concept of pure growth is three types of areas of growth.
okay.
Functional growth. Functional growth is really the intellectual knowledge to solve problems. So if you want to be healthier, what do you eat? If you want to sleep better, how do you sleep? All those functional skills that you need to be successful, healthy, happy.
Mm,
Emotional growth. Second one. We know what that's about. You know, being centered, being, accessible to people and connected with others and managing your ups and downs and swings. But creative growth is the last one. And the thing about this is, you know, we stop playing. We talked about joy earlier.
yeah.
So much of our time in our life we think has to be accountable to something. But when do you step back and just find a art practice, music practice, something that feeds your soul, that allows your mind to grow and expand, by the way, which is good for your brain and your
Yep.
aging brain. And so the lessons that I've learned by watching generations now of kids and adults learn music and art is that those folks who commit to having creative practices seem to be happier.
Yeah.
And I don't know why chemically. I could just tell you they have an escape hatch. It's when they're making their jewelry or woodworking or ceramics or painting or drawing or just noodling on the guitar, which I do. I could pick up my guitar for 6 minutes and I feel my whole body slowing down, my breathing shift. And, it's a quasi meditative practice. So, so I think at the end of the day, I think we don't value the arts, generally speaking, because we don't have this connection between arts and a pathway to making money that's
Right.
really easy. So
Yep.
it just got suppressed in society. And you need people like me to advocate for it because it's good for you, it's good for humanity, it's good for your health, happiness, and your soul. And so I'm going to continue to do that.
I love that. I mean, I always talk about like how can you become a creator in your life, right? And being creative isn't necessarily even just um those things you were thinking. I was thinking like, oh, like making, a lot of people are making sourdough, right? Or creating a puzzle or creating a new idea or creating, I don't know, an AI agent, whatever floats your boat these days, right? But like, how can you just say, I am a person who is creative all the research shows, as you said, like that creating actually something, a photo album,
So
a
I'm
photo
having,
book.
yeah, yeah, I have a thought to add to this.
Yeah,
Adults are
please.
so self-critical.
Yes.
Kids are professional students. They learn, they try, they move on to the next thing. But so I come across adults and I tried that. I did a scrapbook thing. I tried to paint. I stink. I can't draw. I can't draw a stick figure to save my life. And I go, so I sometimes I challenge them. I go, hey, can you play a song on the piano? They go, no, I don't play the piano. And I go, what do you mean? No, I never took piano lessons. I said, so then I'll go, oh, so you expect to be able to be a great artist without ever taking a class or learning,
Yes.
right? But you need to study to do music. Why is it different? Go in and jump in and take a class and see how you feel. How does it make you feel? And don't be self critical. Lean into the people around you, see how they feel about what they're doing, and learn from others. This notion of lifelong learning, we've heard about that term, right?
Yeah.
I may have coined a new term. It's called lifelong creative learning.
I
And the
love that.
challenge with that is at like 18, we stop, and then maybe we have to pick it up again at 50. And I want to advocate that we do it forever. Just keep doing creative things. And then you might make your sourdough a little bit easier because, brain is more fluid and it solves creative problems easier because you've never let go of that creative muscle. And that's
Yeah.
that's the
I mean,
continuum that I'm
I,
trying to get to.
I'm a big class person. I love taking creative classes. I think that the bottom line about this is success and money, and you've given us such a great personal story about this. Um, it can't protect you from midlife. It can't protect you from the feeling of emptiness, the confusion, the burnout, the truth, the realizing that you've evolved past what it is maybe that you thought you were going to do forever. Um, and that if we can step back and look at process and look at solutions and have fun and bring play back into the formula rather than just doing it for purpose, uh, aka money, there's a whole new life waiting for you. One of my clients, I was just doing this life mapping exercise. She came to where I live for the day, and she realized like between 0 and 10, she lost purposeless play. Right, like you
Mm.
only do stuff because it's going to get you somewhere. And so
Sure.
I'm here with you, Matt. Whoever is listening to this is like, do something just for the freaking heck of it, because it feels good, because you suck at it and you just want to like start at the beginning, um, and see how that lights up your heart, because that I think is the way to creating your next chapter in a beautiful way. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad we're able to do that. I'm so glad that people get to hear your story. Definitely make sure we're going to put in the comments. And then when we replay this, you want to go to Matt Ross, 2Ts2Ss.com, and you can get the book, Grow or Fold, Transform Yourself in Midlife and Beyond. MattRoss.com/book, MattRoss.com. You can follow him on all the things. We'll put all of that stuff up in the chat and in the comments when we post this. But Matt, thank you for being here. I really appreciate
My pleasure.
you
And if they
taking
want
the
to hear
time.
if they want to hear my baritone voice, they could also hear the audible version of the book.
You know, I started reading books and then listening too, so I can because I'm like, it's so good. I want to listen and read. So buy the book and then download the Audible, and then you can hear Matt's voice actually reading it to you. It's the best thing.
There
You're
you go.
chopping vegetables, you're hearing Matt. It's very inspiring.
Marnie, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Ladies and gents, remember, in all ways, it is your responsibility to life check yourself. We'll see you next time.